Hello, and welcome back to, excuse me, welcome back to my live stream, practice live stream. I hope a bunch of people come today. I've talked to a few of you. We're going to do two main things, and maybe some more depending on questions I get in the chat. I invited a couple people to do that, so I hope you will. And I'm going to try to do a couple of things differently today. We're not going to use a timer. We're not going to use a journal. Mostly that's because it's not as good for you, the audience, and for the video to stay up. There's a lot of me just writing things down and sort of waiting to play again. I think if I just try to be entertaining in between and talk a little bit, I will be my own rest. And it might mean a little shorter session today, but that's okay. I'm also going to try to say less. That's one of the things that's a little bit annoying. Is a thinking word, though, so don't feel bad if you say a lot. It means you're trying to be deliberate about what you say. But you can also be silent and think about it. What's hard is to think about being silent instead of saying and still get your thinking done so that you say the next thing. But I digress. I also, just as an aside, am trying to eliminate, what's the word? This is the thinking. Comma, and then you say stuff. You can just say the stuff. And I'm also trying to eliminate actually from my vocabulary, because you can also just say the thing. So it implies a little bit of elitism, and so you can join me in doing that if you'd like. Sometimes it's appropriate to say those words, but most of the time it's us just posturing, and I don't want to do it. So the only other thing is that I'm not going to talk a lot at the beginning up front of the stream. Last time I talked about 14 minutes, and that's, I'd say about 12 minutes too long. So we're right here at the 2-minute mark, so I'm going to get to playing. I have an email from my former student. I'll just call him Josh, just in case he doesn't want to be identified in any other way. See, there's another And he was asking me a lot of questions about just some basic sort of production things that we worked on when he was a student. He had a lot of kind of overblowing issues, and he solved them, I think, rather adequately, rather well, and played a really brilliant senior recital, and has gone on to do great things, and has had a long and storied music career already. And so he's obviously got something going on. But he was asking a lot of questions recently in an email about production stuff, and also about my mouthpiece routine and maybe how those coincide. And so I have his email up, and I could read parts of it, but I'm going to try to just address, I've already emailed him back, so I'm actually going to go through my email. And Josh, if you're watching, or if you're listening to this later and you want to email me more, I'll try to address your concerns in the next one. Or maybe we can have a live lesson on Zoom, which anybody, by the way, is welcome to have. So he wanted to know about, there's a concept I haven't discussed really on the channel called a forward sound. I might have done it in some of my YouTube warm-ups, but I haven't really done it in this scenario, in this forum. And so I'll talk about it a little bit. The idea is, let me get a trumpet going here. The idea of a forward sound is that the sound doesn't come from the lips in concept. So obviously the lips are vibrating. That is what's making the sound. This is a concept and not a description of what's actually happening. All right. So if you disagree with this, that's totally fine. It's not to be disagreed with or agreed with. It might help some people with their production, right? So that's what it is. I mean, I'd still love to hear what you have to say about it, but I just don't want you to think like I'm trying to tell you this is the way it works. This is the way that I think about it, so that it works better for me. That's sort of the idea anyway. So what is that concept? Well, okay, obviously I'm going to breathe in. To start my production, I have to have air. So I'm going to breathe in and I'm going to breathe out. The turnaround is really critical, because that's what makes it possible for my support and my air to have as much power in it as possible. Okay, good. So then I blow out. What happens? Well, it's going to go through my throat and over my tongue and through my aperture, whatever that means. But it's not going to create a buzz just yet. It's going to go into the horn, And the resistance, if you will, of the entire length of tubing is 4.5 feet in this case, right? It's going to go into the horn and encounter some reflection, some resistance, right? And that resistance is going to sort of, the wave of that resistance is going to propagate back up the pipe and then act on as a force on my lips, which is then going to cause them to come together to vibrate. So they're being blown open by the air coming through them, and they're being pushed closed by the resistance. And so what does that mean? Well, it means my lips are trapped in between the two forces, and they can stay relaxed and stay supple while I'm just blowing air. That's the idea, right? Again, is that really what's happening? I don't know. I think that there's some physics backing to some of those statements, but I definitely couldn't tell you for sure. And the videos that we have, I mean, you can also just vibrate your lips into the mouthpiece and a tone still comes out. So I don't think that there's just necessarily one way to do it. I think there's good ways and bad ways, and so I'm trying to find the best way for the type of trumpet playing that I do. And because he specifically asked about it, that's what we're talking about today. So how do you build that? Well, originally, I was really opening up my aperture to get the maximum so that my lips couldn't vibrate by themselves. They had to have this reflection. So let me show you what that sounds like. Let me find a mouthpiece that's appropriate. Okay, so make sure I don't blow you out of the water. I'm going to try to be better about this as well. So I'm going to really open up my aperture, really do a lot of puckering, so I'm rolling my aperture open a little bit too much. And I'm going to blow really hard, or I should say a lot of air, and that reflection will come back, and you'll hear it. There's sort of an air sound, and then the response happens, and it's this great big sound. Watch. So a little bit too much sound in some cases, right? And it can get really stuck in the slots, right? Let me show you. I'll do some Vince slurs, some fast slurs in that method. It still comes out and it actually sounds pretty good, but watch what happens as I back off the dynamic, right? I'm using a ton of strength to just kind of keep things in that position, and that was supposed to be not part of it, right? I was supposed to be relaxed because I was blowing through, and that's because the aperture is being blown too far open, and I'm gripping it there, right? So watch what happens when I try to do Vince slurs softer. It starts to get really bad in weird ways. I'm getting a double buzz, but I'm also getting a spitty sound, and I'm still finding some reflection, but it's going away from me. It's not, I can't find that same place to blow, and so I'm curling my bottom lip in, and I'm doing all kinds of bad stuff. That's just the aperture is braced too far open in a passive way on the rim. I used to do this to the extreme, and I can't really get there right now. My habit is to make a smaller aperture now, which that's what I want to get into as well. So that was the first step, right? Though that's what I taught when I first started teaching, because that was getting me a lot of really good results. And in general, it allows you to use more air. It requires you to use the air and not just your lips, because you kind of can't use your lips, right? So that's what I wanted to address, that was not, it's not necessarily a mistake in teaching in terms of that's a good way to start finding the reflection if you can't find it ever. If you don't know what I'm talking about, right? You can go back and look at my warm-up videos, finding a reflection on lead pipe buzzing, right? It's opening up that aperture and blowing a ton of air, and then letting that reflection come back and cause the vibration. It really magnifies the feeling of that reflection spot, right? But it's not an efficient way to play long term because it requires a ton of strength. You waste a lot of air, and you end up actually you get really beefy chops. But boy, if you get out of shape, you can't play a note. You're kind of always playing on slightly fatigued and extremely strong lips, right? And you're really not using that strength for anything except just basic production. So it's not. Ultimately, came towards a smaller aperture setting, and that really helped me. So what does that sound like? Well, ultimately, it actually makes it easier once you know what you're looking for in terms of a reflection. And again, the reflection, just to reiterate, is just the feeling of the. It's like a wall in the trumpet, and you're leaning on the wall. I've talked about it this way before, but instead of holding every note with your lips like this, you're just putting your hand on the wall and you're leaning on it. I'm pretending because the edge of the screen is not a wall in my house. And then you're just sliding up and down the wall, and you're always just leaning. It's a very relaxed kind of feeling. So that's what we're looking for. And you can find that when you blow into the trumpet, you should feel some resistance, some blowback that you can engage then with your chops. So you want to roll into it a little bit, right? But that doesn't mean it's a super open spread aperture. That's just the only way I could do it when I was in school. So anyway, so how do we find a better setup for that? Let me make sure on the email that I'm in order now. Yeah, you get a lot of air balls and you can't really play soft, right? That's where we left off. So, but the forward sound, the reflection, and we call this forward sound because it's as if the sound happens out here instead of right here, right? At least that's how I think of it. It also travels further. It has more carry to it. It can cut through things better. But it also has more capability to blend because it has more a richer overtone series. It's basically maximizing the resonance of this instrument. And you can look up standing wave physics and stuff like that. Smarter people than I have already covered that all over the internet, especially on ITG and NTC videos. So go check those out. There's a really good NTC one, and I absolutely cannot for the life of me remember who it was. Somebody maybe in the comments can look it up while I'm doing this and put it there, and I'll say it on stream. But yeah, some really, really brilliant stuff about standing wave physics that echo these ideas. I'm not sure if it's the same, but it seems to line up. So what we really want is to maximize the resonance, and that doesn't require a super spread aperture. It just requires engagement of that reflection. So I'm trying to come down to a smaller aperture with way more control of that spot. And I say in the email, and I want to reiterate this here, I don't know what I'm talking about. This is what I'm currently working on, and so I want to show you it more than describe it to you. I'm not really ready to tell you how to do it. I'm ready to show you what I've been working on, if that makes sense. So let me do that more. So if you don't have the myriad of giant mouthpieces that are behind me, you can still work on this. You start with the smallest, the most closed aperture that you can, and that might make a very bad sound, right? But I want to know that it's closed, because then I know that it's not passively, in other words, braced by the rim. Once I put the rim on there, whatever is inside the rim is all that's ever going to be inside the rim, unless I play super duper wet, and then I'm just holding too hard anyway. So whatever's trapped by the rim, that's going to be it. So I want to make sure that I start from something that can be small, and then if I open it up, maybe by blowing a little bit harder, or maybe by my tongue position, and then I'm letting my aperture be pushed open, that's okay, because I know that I can pull it back as I need to. In other words, I know that it can be small and still work. So I can work on that. This is a good old color change exercise, right? So I'm just starting from a place that's way too closed. I'm opening up my tongue position, which is making the airstream shape a little bit bigger. That's making the aperture a little bit wider, a little bit louder, a little bit brighter sound, right? And then I'm coming back down on it without losing that tone that I've found, right? So that my aperture is more pliable and I'm in more control, but I'm not doing a lot more work. I'm doing a little more work, but I'm not doing a lot more work here. So that's the exercise that I recommend. You kind of have to stuff a little more lip into the mouthpiece at first. That's the first step if you're starting from that sort of super braced open position that I was talking about before. If you don't play like that, then that doesn't mean this exercise won't work for you, but it also may not be all that useful. So just as a caveat, again, this is what I'm working on. My student was asking about it, and so I wanted to show kind of how it works as far as I know so far. Also, these exercises are not that's not super dangerous. If you don't get anything out of it, then don't do it. If you do, then describe it to me. Send me an email. Tell me how it works for you, because I could use all the help I can get with these things. So, okay, that's if I don't have all these dangerous mouthpieces behind me. But what if I do? What am I doing with all those mouthpieces after all? Well, I'll show you. I don't think I have the illegal one that I'm not allowed to show you yet. That's just not my project. I do. Where did I put the? Oh, they're on the chair. Oh, I do have it, but I won't show it. So good. So I'll start often on. Oh, John Harbog from an NTC Masterclass. Is that the physics? I don't remember his name. So maybe that is John Harbaugh. Harbaugh, if that is the standing wave physics one. He works with a few students during the video. I think, if I remember correctly, it's about 20-25 minutes long, and it should be a little more than 10 years old by now, I think. That's all pretty approximate, so, but thank you for looking that up, if that's right. Okay, so let me get into, so I will often start the day with my Con Helleberg tuba mouthpiece. And what am I trying to accomplish with this? Well, I want to place my aperture smaller, and in order to do that with control without it affecting my tone, in other words, just to be in control of all of that, I'm isolating a bigger chunk, right? So this is definitely tons of lip in the mouthpiece, right? Way more than normal. But I'm focusing my muscles to try to get just that small aperture that I want. And then I'm trying to move that around. So I'll often just do C down to pedal C on all of these mouthpieces, and I'll show it a little bit. I don't want to get too deep in the paint here, because again, and as a caveat to this, I do not recommend that people do big mouthpieces unless they are absolutely sure they can be safe with it. And what I mean by that is, if you play by feel at all, in other words, that you feel like this is an A and this is a C and this is an E, and you really need that feeling, this will absolutely ruin it. And your chops will be swollen all the time, and you'll press too hard then. You won't feel like anything is right, and you can really ruin your chops. You can really hurt yourself by playing big mouthpieces. So I don't recommend it to anyone, really. But that's not to say that I'm like, oh, I'm so much better, that's why I can do it. No, I just am extremely careful, and I try not to play by feel, but instead by, or not feel of my lips, but instead by the feel of the release of air. And that took me a long time to build that awareness and get to there. I do still recommend that. And at that point, then almost nothing can hurt you. Without getting, again, too deep in the paint about the story, I know a few trumpet players. Maynard Ferguson was one, actually. But I don't know him. But I know a few trumpet players who, it seems like they can play every brass instrument. And they can play like jazz solos on a trombone, like a valve trombone or an alto trumpet. They'll play 16 choruses, and then they'll pick up their B-flat trumpet and play double high C. And I'm like, you can't do that. But that was 15 years ago that I would see that and be like, I don't know how that's even possible. Now I kind of get it a little more. That person, I'm thinking one in specific, but there's a few. They don't play by the feel of their lips all the time. They're strong there, but they play by how the trumpet is working, how the air is working, right? And I haven't asked them that. I guess I should. The ones that I'm still in touch with, I should ask them about that. But a lot of times they don't really think about it at all. They just play the instrument. And I think that maybe is a little bit evidence that they're not really thinking about how it feels here. They're not really thinking about how it feels even in the full apparatus. They're just making the instrument work, and that's all that matters. So something to think about. Anyway, so here I go. I'm going to try a little bit of this. I don't know where a C is, but we'll just play whatever feels right. Oh. So it's going okay. I'm getting a little bobble where that's over stressing my muscles, probably because I've played a lot of regular trumpet today, and I normally do this first thing, so it's kind of waking up my muscles. Now they're already awake, so they're like, what is this? Right? And that's a little bit of what I was just describing, that I have a familiarity with regular trumpet mouthpiece right now because I've been playing a couple hours today, and so these feel too big. Right? So I'm not all the way to, I don't think I'm ever going to get to where it doesn't feel familiar when I play trumpet. It just works, right? That's not, the goal is not to get all the way to no feelings matter. That would be crazy, right? Then I'm fishing in the dark for every note. That I don't think I want to feel that. I want at least a little bit of grip into the mouthpiece that I feel like I can trust. But mostly I want my air to do the work and my coordination to be the thing I trust. So that one went a little bit better, right? And I've also been trying to release my buzzing into the air instead of just, what I often will do is, all right, I'll sort of let go of my chops to stop the note, and that's not a good way to do it. That's a bad habit that I get into sometimes because I'm really focused on the poo attack, the small aperture. I'm not focused on the back end of the note, and that can be a huge liability that makes it hard for you to play normal things. So I really want to right into the silence, right, and keep the air moving through it. I already did this one. The next one I do is bass trumpet. This is a copy of, it's supposedly a copy of the Herseth bass trumpet mouthpiece. I don't think that that's official, but I don't know where it would have come from otherwise. So, but that doesn't make it necessarily good. I believe it was just the only one he had. But it's a pretty good mouthpiece. Oh. See, I did the wrong kind of releases that whole time because I was focused wrong. Anyway, you get the idea. I work down. I have another bass trumpet mouthpiece. Then I have this, what I call the 0.5 C. It's just a 1.5 New York, Mount Vernon that somebody sort of scraped out the edge of and then redid the rim. And so it's an 18.5 millimeter inner diameter instead of 17.25, I think, is 1.5 normally. So it's basically one full size bigger than a 1.5. So that's a really good bridge for me to get back to a normal size. Is like, this is a giant mouthpiece, and I normally play a straight 8. So I'm going all the way down to about 15 millimeters in inner diameter. So this 18, between that and this is the other, this is a 10.5 CW that somebody really bored out. So you can see that's way too big. And then this is the 0.5. And this is my normal mouthpiece, right? So you can see that one, that's the biggest one, and then that's the in between, right? You can sort of see that anyway. So this is a nice intermediate mouthpiece rim for me. And what you can see is that I'm using muscles way out here on my face, right? That's what's really fascinating about this, and that's what's hard to build. If I just play trumpet, I can get away with never using those muscles, right? And you might say, well, Gabriel, if I can get away with never using those muscles on trumpet, excuse me, yeah, I'm doing poo attacks. Oh gosh. Ah, too much. Okay, let's see. I can play again. You might say, okay, well, why would I, if I can play the trumpet without all those muscles active, why would I want to, right? Well, I'll show you. Sorry. Sounds fine, right? Getting around the horn just fine. That was 2 octaves of range. No problem. No harm, no foul, or no foul, whatever it is. But if I do anything really loud, watch. I don't know if you can see, but all of a sudden those muscles start to engage, but they're not used to being engaged if I don't normally play that way. So now they're running the meter. They're going to run out of stamina really quick, and then I'm going to be blowing out. And then especially in the high range, watch what happens. And this was primarily one of the reasons I couldn't play in the high range very easily, because I have to add pressure, but my muscles are already braced outside of the mouthpiece. They can't get underneath the rim after I've pressed too hard. And so these muscles are trying to help, but they can't engage fast enough. I can't get the coordination right if I'm too relaxed to start. So again, is this the way that everybody should play? I don't know. This is what has helped me. And normally I don't make caveat statements like that too much, but I just want to reiterate that these are the things I'm working on now. So stuff that I've worked on a long time, I don't have any problem saying, yeah, that's the way you do it. This is a good thing to do, and here's how it works. This stuff, I'm like, well, I don't know, it might work. Seems to work, right? So a small aperture, and again, now that we're, if I go back to the first exercise, right? Excuse me. It's a much more secure high G that has way more sound to it, right? It's not thin, it's not shrinking as I go up. It's getting louder as I go up, right? And that's because I have the stability built into the way that I normally play. Now that takes some discipline in the middle lower register, especially mezzo forte or mezzo piano, where I can get away with maybe just being relaxed and not worrying about it. But the benefit I get from not being too relaxed and not worrying about it is that I'm ready to go anywhere I want, anytime, right? And so if that means the low register or the high register, if that means loud or soft, if that means a certain color change, then I'm ready and I'm already engaged, so I don't have to wait for my body to catch up to my ear. It's just right there, right? So now does everybody need that? No, not really. if you just play solos, for instance, with orchestras and bands and piano and whatever, then you can just practice exactly the way you want to do things, and as long as the tempos are stable and as long as everything feels right that day, then you'll be fine. But if you have to match somebody else, or maybe if the pianist jumps in a beat early and you weren't ready, you still won't be ready, but at least if you're already playing, at least your chops will be. So you have a much better chance to catch things quickly, and that's really your job. If you play second trumpet in a brass quintet, in an orchestra, in a wind ensemble, your job is to make the first trumpet player sound good, and so you do need to be ready at all times for anything. And if you just play chamber music, it doesn't even matter if you're the only trumpet. Well, yeah, but there's a clarinet that you have a duet with, and maybe they're a little bit sharp or flat. And can you handle that and still make it all sound good and play your part? Or when you go for it, do you lose your response because everything has to be just right? See what I mean? So it gives you a little more latitude. That's all. Or at least that's what I've found. Okay, so how do you practice this? Well, another thing that a lot of people have is a cutout, right? The cutout is a really good, this is my screw rim cutout. This has my old V2 rim, which is kind of the rim on the John Hagstrom Yamaha mouthpiece, is this rim. And it's an old Schilke rim designed by my father. And so this was Vince number 2, is the second design. I also have some V1s and V3s, but V2 is really the best one for me in general. It's a nice curved rim with a pretty nice flat, just a tiny flat section on the top. So it's really good for this. So I can put that in my horn, and I can practice this small aperture. And again, what am I trying to get? I'm trying to get maximum resonance of the whole horn. Well, on the cutout, I'm not going to have a reflection, so it's a little bit counterintuitive, right? It sounds like I'm saying, well, it does, just the air goes between the lips and vibrates like that. The cutout helps me with the placement of the aperture, and then when I go back to the trumpet, I'm looking for the reflection, and I've already worked on the placement, right? So. Right? The super low notes are really challenging for me. So when I'm trying to do those, I have to use a lot of muscles just in exactly the right grouping. What do I do with my real mouthpiece? There it is. So now I don't need to do that on here. I just need to get the same aperture set up and then expand the tone, find the reflection, and that's my production. And there you go. That's how I set that up. So I hope that helps. I should also eliminate so, I think. That's like a pause word for me as well. But I hope that helps. There's a big I don't know what else you want me to cover on that. I think that basically covers the email. I can recap a little bit, I guess. So my older approach when I was in college and just coming out of college, I was really I was wide open. I played in an orchestra. I played in Wichita Symphony, and generally we played pretty loudly in that orchestra. We played a lot of big brass stuff. Don Duncan was the first trumpet, and he could really play beautifully soft things, but he could really play loud too. And when you're playing Mahler 1, you got to do both things. Or what else did we do? Bartok Concerto for Orchestra. I absolutely could not play loud enough on the second trumpet solo on the last movement there, right? So anyway, I was really geared up to loud playing, not because of the orchestra, but because that was the only place where I felt secure reflection all the time. And so my warm-ups were super duper loud. My aperture was always kind of spread open and gripped open by the mouthpiece. I played a bigger mouthpiece that was really cushiony on the rim so that I didn't feel that bite to the rim too hard because I was also going to press really hard, right? And I was just throwing tons of air into the horn, getting this really great big sound. And I got by okay on that, but it was just not ultimately efficient. And what I was really getting out of it was the lip pucker. It was the lip behind the mouthpiece, right? That is what helps me keep control, right? If I just keep relaxed and I press, right? There's not a lot behind the mouthpiece to protect my lip from my teeth in the rim, right? From getting pinched. But if I do, this is a Hickman concept, right? Called puckering. Well, I don't know that he invented it, but he talks about it as puckering. I used to call it lip roll because that's what I thought I would. The rolling of the lips outward to get that big aperture was actually just putting what I also call a muscular pad behind the rim, right? So I didn't notice it as the pad. I noticed it as the lip roll. Hickman calls it puckering, and that really kind of puts the two ideas together, that you're coming out with the lips in order to provide some support, usually on the bottom lip more than the top, because the top, we get our stability usually from our top teeth anyway, and it hurts really bad if you thin out that lip. We already know not to smile when we do lip slurs, but if I pucker both top and bottom lip, then I have something to press into, and then that gives me some pliability that I can play with. And that's kind of, that's the inner target, right? This is like the bullseye of a dartboard. But then I also want this next ring to be active, and that's controlling the placement of those muscles, right? So you can think of it as these muscles are going in, and these muscles are pulling them back out into the right position, and that's giving me this ultimate kind of stability. But it has to be active. If I'm not active with it, then I don't get good results, right? So that's what I was doing when I was bracing open. I was actually just puckering, and I was getting a lot of reflection and able to use a lot of air, but the pucker was what was being so successful that whole time. So now I can do that with a smaller aperture. I can get just as big a sound. I'm activating the resonance by finding that same reflection. I just can't throw 1,000% air at it anymore, which is a good thing because then I can play longer phrases. It's not stopping me from playing loudly, right? I can always let that aperture open up as I blow harder. So it's not going to stop me from playing loudly. It's just going to allow me to be able to play it, all the dynamics, with the same reflection. So that's the idea of the whole thing. That's the recap. And I hope that all makes sense. And if it doesn't, then don't worry about it, right? There's a bunch of stuff that I don't cover here that I know works really well for people and that I'm excited to explore, but I don't talk about things on stream. Right now I'm working on this, right? So I've been working on, when I mean I've been working on it now, I mean like for the last 6 months, and some of it for the last 6 weeks. That's enough time for me to feel like I can talk about it a little bit and demonstrate it more. If it's something that I've done 2 or 3 times in my life, I don't want to demonstrate that because I'm really not sure if I'm using it well, and I'm really not sure what it might do to me or you. So hopefully this is right in the wheelhouse of like, I don't know what I'm talking about yet, but I kind of physically can show you what's working and what's not, and I can describe it to the best of my ability, but absolutely don't take my word for it. If you don't agree, then don't worry about it. I'm not going to be offended. It's just these practice sessions are just me working on stuff, right? So there's another question here. Do you feel like your dad's exercises on the lead pipe, like G on top of the staff, accomplish the same sort of things as doing the visualizer exercises? I don't. Let me show you what that is and why it's different. So we'll do, got caught on my bathrobe. I'm going to have to practice in a bathrobe on this stream, and you'll see why. It's going to be very funny. But so, okay, lead pipe on the, lead pipe exercises. The idea of the lead pipe is sort of twofold as far as I'm concerned. One is that you're getting your air set up and your embouchure posture so that that's a really easy high G on the lead pipe, right? This is the open lead pipe. Then the other is that you're able to use so some of it is similar, right? That you're able to use your muscles to stabilize as you go down to the lower octave, right? And also to stay working as you go up to the high D. So I'll show you what I mean. Now there's not a lot of tangible reflection feeling for me on the top note of the lead pipe, but on the bottom note there's a ton. So I can find the reflection. In fact, that's what we used to do when I was an undergrad. There's a ton of reflection on that note. So we would find it there, and then we'd put our horn back together and try to play like that all day. The high note on the lead pipe, I find, is a better calibrating exercise for the air, the amount of air, the support of the air, the speed of the air, right? Now I'm going to play with different air speeds as I play up and down the horn, kind of, but the release of the air doesn't change, right? So that's that blowing through that I'm talking about. That's the release of the air really needs to remain unchanged no matter what. So if I'm playing softer, I still feel that release the same way, but I've sculpted the air to be smaller and I'm using less of it. And so the release, it's still finding the same reflection and it's still working. So in a certain way, like, yeah, the top note of the lead pipe is a way to calibrate that, the release of air, right? That also relies on exponential support. As you play, right, you have to support more and more because you're running out of air. And it doesn't allow you to taper, excuse me, on your air as you're playing. Golly. I have a little bit of postnasal drip from just allergies. So I guess I'm... now that I'm on stream, it's affecting me, who knows why. So that, all the way up to high G, that's D and G, right? This is sort of a G lead pipe. And the low note's not a G because, well, the overtone series is not really in tune on a straight pipe, right? Not in tune with a tuner anyway. So that is an octave. It's just actually an octave in like minor third or something, right? So the low note can give you reflection. The high note can give you air release and amount and support. And then the higher notes than that can give you a sense of like how you need to keep these muscles ready. So there are some similarities, right? And again, if you don't have a cutout, this is better than nothing. And it's a good exercise anyway. But it calibrates different things. The top note on the lead pipe does stuff that the cutout will never do, right? And these notes have a reflection, whereas the cutout absolutely does not, right? There isn't even a pipe. It's just a rim. So it's harder for me to find the aperture. Well, actually, I can find the aperture that I want really well on this, right? If I'm playing with too open an aperture, and he talks about this a lot. If I'm playing, that's too open of an aperture, so it works, but only at a loud volume. Actually, kind of exactly the same. So maybe I'm turning around on this. Maybe it is more similar than I let on. But the reason I do the cutout is to build the strength of awareness, which this will give me, but it's easy to throw it away when I'm not playing G on top of the staff. Whereas the cutout, I can play all the notes and place them the same way. So a good strategy might be to play the lead pipe note, get it really centered in with a small aperture. And then go immediately to the cutout and try to use that same setup. Right? So, yeah, but this helps me work on placing notes that, especially low notes, and just really having the awareness of that, is my aperture in the same place, or is it spreading, or something else, right? So this is where I learn physically how to do it. And then the lead pipe might be a good place to find out where it starts in the first place. And like I said, reflection is an incredibly important part of this forward sound concept. It's not really, it doesn't, but this, I guess that's what I'm saying is that this, I might not find the smaller aperture setting on the lead pipe because I can make this work with a spread aperture. And I did for many years, even up to the high G. Your tongue position and your pressure and your sort of holding, like I said, that pucker, that's all happening even with a spread aperture. So it doesn't help me find a smaller aperture anymore. But it can, again, it can be a really great place to start for forward sound. It was my place to start 20 years ago now, right? So, yeah, but that's a great question. And I'm sure my dad doesn't talk about the forward sound concept expressly, but more about the release of air, right? And so that may be more important depending on what kind of playing you're doing. And the forward part of it might come naturally because of the way you blow. So it's not always necessary to talk about it. But it was for me because I didn't blow very well. Okay, good. Well, so I can do this all day, but we should get to practicing something because this is a practice stream after all. And I have plenty of stuff to practice. So there's two things we actually have today on the docket. There I said actually, right? That's not too bad of a one, because if I was elite to anyone, it was myself who didn't write this piece into the description on YouTube, or Restream rather. So this is a piece called Dialogue for a Trumpet and Imaginary Friend by Edward S. Solomon. It's not a very well-known piece. I forgot even how I found it. I think I just saw it on Hickey's website or something and said, oh, that's interesting, unaccompanied trumpet piece that has like singing in it. And I thought this would be great for the Halloween concert that I have coming up on Halloween at 8 o'clock if you want to tune in. It won't be on my stream, it will be on the ECU School of Music webcast, which is also on YouTube, so you can go find them and it'll pop up. They have a lot of great concerts. In fact, we've had a whole bunch this last month of really incredible concerts that have been on the live stream, so go check that out. But I haven't figured out how I'm going to do this piece yet exactly. I mean, I could just do it, right? But to make it a little bit creepier, I thought maybe I'd have somebody else sing the echo parts off stage. That's one idea. Or maybe I'll have somebody, I'll sing it, but if I can find a skeleton that somebody can operate like a puppet, then I might have the singing part, I'll sing it and still perform the piece as normal, right? And you'll be able to sort of probably see that. But they'll operate the puppet, so it won't look, so you'll see them doing it, right? And it'll be like me and a skeleton doing a duet, sort of a duet with your former self or something, I don't know. That's one of the two actual trumpet pieces I'm going to do. The rest of the recital, if you're interested at all, is going to be mostly performance art, still involving a trumpet a lot of the time, but more for the audience to participate in. And there's a lot of really interesting, cool pieces, and I need to set all this up and have some of my students participate, but there's a lot of cool pieces that I found in the Fluxus manual that are just perfect for a Halloween concert. There's also some that I'm not going to perform that are even more perfect. Like there's one where you scoop out your own eyeball. I hope that nobody's ever performed that, but I'm going to list it in the program as works that will not be performed. So it's a silly program, but it's also a silly holiday, right? It's just Halloween. Don't worry about it. All right, so this is, I just want to play this a little bit just because I haven't in a long time, and I want to make sure I can. So I guess maybe I'll leave this on because I am going to sing. Yeah, let's do that. Dia da da dia da da da. Dia da da dia da da da. Dia da da dia da da da. Da 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 dia da. tia ta ta tia ta. No, ta 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 tia. No, yeah, yeah, yeah. So you can get the idea, right? It's a silly piece that I think would be funny with a skeleton companion. I don't want to try to operate the skeleton with like my right hand and try to move it back and forth, so I don't think I'm going to do that. But another option is to have a tiny skeleton on my fingers already that I can just turn towards the audience. Yeah, right? But I have to go to the Halloween store and find out what they have for me to mess with. And I need to just buy a bunch of Halloween-y junk anyway. So that's what that piece is about. That's just the first page. It went pretty well, actually. Normally I have to work on the fingerings a little bit, but that wasn't too bad. The rest of the piece has a little more technique to it, but it's not really all that different. So I'll work on it off camera. You guys don't necessarily need to see me do that, but it's also a great piece if you're teaching students that need to sing more. And if you're my student watching the stream, you know who you are. It's a great piece to force you to sing seriously, not just but really right? That's Rose Variations. That's not the student that I was thinking of, but everybody needs to sing, right? So to really sing loudly and confidently and do the fingerings as well, that's an important skill to have, and it can save your chops a lot, and it can also improve your trumpet playing, your tongue position and your oral posture when you sing with your best singing voice, which, you know, as operatic as you can muster, will actually make your trumpet playing better. It influences your tongue position when you play, and your support and your airflow. So it's a really good, I learned that from Hunter Eberle. I couldn't believe that it was really true, but yeah, he said he sang so hard he broke his voice and he had to have vocal fold surgery or something because it was helping him that much. And he won the Detroit Symphony job when he was really young, so it obviously works, right? Okay. Just checking for more comments, make sure I'm not ignoring anybody. What we really got to practice today is Shazam. And we don't need to practice the beginning. That one, I mean, I still do, but I'm not worried about that part. What I'm worried about is the movement, this back and forth that you have to do, and the continuous, Shazam is what a magician might say, right? And this is a piece that's kind of about that. It's by Folke Rabe. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but I hope so. It's dedicated to Håkan Hardenberger, who has performed it. It's on Spotify. You can go check that out. It's a great recording of it. I think a little bit rhythmically ambiguous sometimes. In other words, there are precise rhythms that are written in that he sort of goes maybe more quickly through or maybe more slowly through. That's okay if it's an unaccompanied piece, right? So you can play with the time and things like that a little bit, but I tend to choose not to unless it says to do so, like it says freely or it says rubato. And in fact, this does start rubato, but I think that is a direction for just the first section and not the whole piece, because we get a tempo marking later. And anyway, so you can choose. I love the recording of Håkan doing it, though. I mean, it's just brilliant trumpet playing. I would love to hear, and hopefully one day I'll make this recording, but I would love to hear a recording of somebody doing this that is stereophonically accurate to the stage directions. And you'll see, I can try to show this to you for a second. Yeah, that's almost in focus. There it is. That there are arrows that are in the part. And let me see if I can find a page with arrows. Well, we'll just go to the ending. That's what we really need to work on anyway, because we want to end strong, right? And I tell my students all the time, you've got to start at the end of pieces. But yeah, look at all these arrows. They're very fast arrows. Yeah, they're not very pleasant. So that's what I need to practice. And unfortunately, because this is a Halloween recital, that's not unfortunate, but unfortunate for me because, of course, if this is a piece about wizardry, I used to think it was a piece, it says, at the beginning it says, check your positioning and foothold as if preparing for a difficult trick. And my interpretation of just that one line for the whole piece was that I would dress up like I was doing a workout, right? Like a trick, like a gymnastics trick, which also makes sense because there's a lot of sort of trumpet pyrotechnics, gymnastics in this piece. And so that was funny for ITG, and that's kind of my sense of humor. But it's almost definitely really about a magician, right? Shazam tells us a lot. Magicians do tricks, right? And so this is your Merlin the Magician kind of medieval times kind of magician with big wizard sleeves, right? And a hood. And so what I've done is, I don't have a costume for that yet, but I'm going to get one if I possibly can. And so I have my bathrobe, which is a hooded bathrobe, and I'm going to get very hot doing this, so we might not do it for very long, but I am going to wear this because I'm worried about the robes getting in my way as I play, right? And these aren't even wizard sleeves, but they're very baggy, and I've chosen to wear an actual collared shirt underneath this for the same reason, right? Because I'm gonna have a normal shirt on during the performance. I'm not gonna probably be able to take it off and then put this whole costume on. I mean, I do want to do costume changes, but I want them to be quick enough that I can keep the party going, right? So we're gonna, and I also am worried that this is going to influence my vision, especially as I'm going back and forth. So this will be the weirdest of my live streams yet. I think I'm going to leave this open, this part open, because that will actually be harder than if I cinch it up, right? And it'll also hopefully make it a little cooler for me. But all right, so we're going to practice this with the actual motions, and we're going to do it the way that we should do it. So I'm gonna keep pretending here, right? But I'm going to sing a lot because this is really a challenging piece. Okay, so here we go. Yeah, that's right. So this is a really good, if you're practicing this piece, this is a really good little section to figure out. So you've got far left, A major, right? And you're supposed to be far right by the time you get to B flat major. And then you're supposed to be far left again by the time you get to G major. And then back to the middle, right? So that means all I have to remember about this section is that I'm playing, let's see, I'm playing A major, B flat major, G major. Done, right? I never noticed that before. I noticed it was those scales, but I never noticed that the arrows correspond to the beginning of the new scale area. That's great for us. So, not bad. Now I need to go faster, so. That's about as good as I'm going to get it. All right, now some more. I haven't sang any yet, but I don't really have these pitches in my ear, so I'm cheating. I'm playing them so that they get in my ear, and then I'll practice them correctly. It's also different though when I sing. I can get the motions. Da 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 dun 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 da da, and the arrows actually get less severe. So you're just kind of going back and forth like this, right? Da, 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 da. da, da, da. But boy, is that really hard to do, right? And you don't want to go too slowly, but you almost have to, just to get the motions to be severe enough for the audience for them to telegraph to the audience, right? Or that's the wrong word, for them to be obvious to the audience, all right? Huh. It's just stupid hard, right? So we can practice. Dum dum bum 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 bum. Dun, 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 dun. Bum, bum, bum. This is what's hard, is that it's always da 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 da. Now maybe that's the way to think about it. You always do one note on the side and back, and then you play one more note still straight ahead, and then you go to the other side, right? So maybe the way to think about it is, oh boy. Oh, sorry. And that's how the piece ends. You do, like, you just finish the trick, like, wow, everybody. So that's what we have to work on, and we want it to be fast enough that I can actually get through it and it's exciting, right? So if I just play it as written, I can play it pretty fast. I mean, without the directions, right? But it's about getting my head around those directions. And you might think, well, Gabriel, just memorize it, and then you don't have to worry about all this. Yeah, but it's the kind of piece that just really doesn't want to be memorized. It doesn't have patterns the way that you would think of them normally. You just have to by rote memorize. It's like trying to memorize pi out to 1,000 digits. There are people who can do it. I can do like 12 maybe. I'm just not one of those people. So I can't memorize all these expanding, you know. I can remember the sound of it, but I can't get the sound in the fingers and the motions all together. So that's what I need to work on between now and then. And that is the method that we are using now, right? Yeah, this robe's going to get hot real quick. But let's see what we can get done. And then I'm hungry. I'm going to have to go eat. But let's see. There's some nasty stuff at the top of the page. So let's see if we can get these two spots worked out. I think this method is really working, where if I think of this as the first note of a group of 3, and then, so I have like a pickup then, right? It's rebarring it in my head, but I think that makes sense because this feels like an action, and just staying does not, right? I guess I could go, I don't, I have to get the articulation is also, I'm not doing. That's right. So that's also right. Also not hearing that A flat very well. And it's important to go through the ending so that I feel comfortable with the directions, that I have to go there. I only go over to the right once, and then I come back over, and then I'm done. Okay, so that went actually okay. I'm going to have to really shed this in order in bigger chunks because it's going to be so hard to concentrate long enough. And this is the last of 4 pages of stuff that's really not unlike this. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be a challenge. All right, let's see about the top of this page. We should get the previous page out too, because the phrase does not start there exactly. Oops. That's a hard one. Practiced these in a while. Oh, I should have muted you. So that's the last page of that, and I think that's enough for me for right now. This is a challenge to play physically, right? My lip has a lot of work to do, even despite what we just talked about, keeping the aperture small. When you're moving around like this, you're not going to keep a perfect seal that's even pressure. You're going to lean a little bit, especially when I'm trying to look at the music. So I really do need to memorize these licks, and then I can look where my trumpet is, and I'm not going to go into one corner or the other of my embouchure. I can feel it on my top lip especially, and that's probably because I'm looking down and up, I'm looking up away from my trumpet and angling my head to do so. I'll watch the tape back and find out. But this piece is really an amazing piece that I think a lot more people can play than attempt it. It has some super low notes and super high notes. There's a very soft high G and high G flat in it. There's some pedal notes. I think double pedal C. But nobody can hear that low, so don't worry about it, right? But it's actually a joy to play. If you know all your scales, again, there's a great piece. If you have an advanced student who refuses to learn all of their major or minor scales, and they can play a lot of stuff, but they just can't play that. Well, this piece has probably every major scale in it at some point, and a lot of symmetrical scales as well, a lot of octatonic and whole tone kinds of things, and then a lot of arpeggios. So I guess there are patterns, but they just don't make sense to our normal tonal ears, and even our atonal ears. This is not like a set class kind of piece either, where it's like, oh, this construction of a half step and a whole step and a minor third or whatever keeps coming back so your ear can hear it. No, it's like, yeah, it's just kind of swaths of color and sound. And if you think about it, the conception of the piece, if it's a magician doing all this, yeah, that's what you imagine, right? If this person is conjuring up something, there's these colors and lights and these, it comes in these sort of streaks across the sky, and maybe stuff is coming out of the wand or his hands or something, right? It sparkles and stars and who knows what, right? And I think that's the idea behind this piece, is that it's supposed to sort of be magical in that way. So, yeah, this is, and it's a fun piece because it doesn't take itself too seriously. So I will practice it more. I only have, I think, 2 more live streams before the concert. So I'll either be practicing this a lot or I won't be practicing it on stream because I'm already practicing it a lot elsewhere. But I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope that you, I don't know, got a kick out of some of it. I'm glad that somebody came and asked some questions, and I hope that I addressed all of my former students' questions and issues with my former teaching. So come again next week. I will almost certainly be here every Friday at 3 p.m. And if you don't already subscribe to, I'm not asking you to subscribe like, follow, and subscribe, but if you don't already look at the YouTube warm-ups, a lot of what I talked about today exists in a much more concise format on my YouTube warm-ups, which are part of the stream. If you're looking at it on Twitch, just look up Mr. Trumpet Prof, the same spelling, on YouTube, and you'll find a playlist for all of my warm-ups. I continue to intend to add more of them, but I have to invent them in a succinct enough way to feel good about putting them up. And so I owe 2 of my students different, I think, a metronome warm-up, where you just use a metronome to do a lot of things. It's very good. And that one I could almost do. And the other one is a raw lead pipe. So actually, if you watch this, if you are my student who I promised that to, this is a good primer to that warm-up. But I don't do a lot of just the raw, like, singular lead pipe buzzing anymore. So I have to sort of do that for a while and get how it works. So this is actually very helpful. So thank you to the person in chat who asked questions about it. I will have a much better idea of how to make that into a useful warm-up for someone, and maybe I can do that this weekend. Anyway, that's all for now. Take care, and I'll